Like many of their famous properties, Disney adapted Cinderella from a much older fairy tale. In this case, it was Charles Perrault's Cendrillon, a short story first published in 1696 as part of his Mother Goose Tales, and Disney did way more than just translate it into English. Walt Disney spent a decade working on the film before it was released. He went through new scripts and writers for years before animation production even started. And if you're wondering what could have been lost in the rewrites, look no further. This is Frank James Bailey with Channel Frederator, and it's time to grab your broom and start sweeping, friends, because today we're going over some of Disney's dark secrets from Cinderella. And also, you missed a spot. Parental negligence. There's one striking difference between the versions right off the bat. In the film, the narrator tells us that Cinderella's dad died, but before that, he was a widowed man looking for a wife who could assume the role of a loving mother for his little one. Lady Tremaine pretended to be that sort of woman to win him and his estate over, and only revealed her true cruel nature to Cinderella after her father passed. No one could blame him for the awful fate that befell on his daughter, unless you're reading the original story, which has way less faith in her dad's intentions. The initial first sentence of the story tells us that once upon a time there was a worthy man who married for his second wife the highest, proudest woman that he had ever seen. So he knew exactly what he was getting his family into with this woman. On top of that, the father never dies. At one point, Perrault tells us that Cinderella endured her terrible life not because she was alone and forced to, but because her dad wouldn't have cared if he knew that she was unhappy. So he would have just scolded Cinderella too. Wait, has Prince Charming been a remedy for her daddy issues this whole time? Excuse our French. At least in both stories, Cinderella's dad cared enough to give her that, beautiful and unique name. Turns out, not so much. The Disney film implies that Cinderella was the fan-favorite princess name from birth, since the narrator calls the character Cinderella at the very beginning of the movie, without any explanation. But most people probably would guess that Cinderella is some sort of reference to being covered in ash and dust, and that guess would be correct. We learn in Perrault's story that she got the name Cinderella, in French Cendrillon, because she used to sit on the cinders of the fireplace after finishing chores for her stepmother. Wait, what? There had to have been somewhere for her to sit sullenly that wasn't a fireplace. Maybe she brought this nickname on herself. But wait, there's more. Cinderella only got her name from the younger and nicer of the two stepsisters. The older stepsister refers to her throughout the story as qui cedron, a made-up French word combining crawl, which means butt, and cendre, which means cinder. Most English variations of the story translate the word as cinder slut or cinder wench. Yikes. But that's not even the worst one. We here at Channel Frederator consulted several French speakers, definitely not me, and can report with authority that Cinderella's original name literally meant ash ass. Just imagine Jack and Gus squeaking that song, Mouseless House. Or don't, because it turns out none of the adorable animals that help Cinderella end up with her true love are part of Perrault's story. It's hard to imagine, since so much of how Disney defines her personality is through the affection that Cinderella shows for the animals around the house, and through how much they love her in return. The original Cendrillon, Sans Animals, is a pretty short story, and Cinderella has a way less defined character in those few pages. Fans of Cinderella's adorable entourage could almost picture how much more dreary the story of her life is without them. Sure, she's abused and ignored by her stepfamily, but at least Disney Cinderella wakes up every morning to the tweets of the birds fluttering around her window and sings with them. In the book, she just lives in the sad attic alone, without even a dust bunny there to greet her. This also means that the most heartwarming sequence of the film was a Disney contribution. Remember how the mice risk life and limb to steal the stepsister's clothing so that they can sew Cinderella a beautiful gown to get to the ball? And also how the dress they make is actually really fierce? Yeah, no part of that is in Perrault's story. We do hear of mice once, when Cinderella's godmother is getting her ready for the ball. She tells Cinderella to grab the mice from the house's traps so that she can turn them into horses. That's a good magic trick and all, but nowhere near as lovely as the idea of her best friends getting to go with her to the event of her dreams. Also, what's the point of writing about mice without tiny sweaters and hats on? It's hopeless. Early in the film, the narrator names another one of Cinderella's defining characteristics. Despite all the mistreatment, she stays positive because she had hope that her dreams would come true. We see this demonstrated quite literally when she shares her dreams with her mice and bird friends in the morning. There's a whole song and everything. Sadly, Perrault's story doesn't imply that Cinderella had any kind of hope about her situation getting better. She was just kind of stuck in a terrible situation and dealt with it. She's similarly depressed when the invitation to the ball comes along, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. First, there's the conception of the ball itself. Baby fever. As we all know, in the film, the king cooks up an idea to host a ball as a social event for his son. The old man, presumably a widow, has only one wish in life: grandkids. Lots of them. At some points, he claims that he wants to see his son happily married, but really he's just in it for the babies, understandably. So the king organizes a big party and invites eligible women from near and far in the hopes that his son will find a love connection with someone. We know the prince doesn't appreciate the boundary invasion at first, but at least it was done with good intentions. The written story has a much less rosy version of events. The prince just wanted to have a party, so he invited a bunch of noble families to a ye old rager. Cinderella's stepsisters make the guest list because they're a well-to-do family. Not the most romantic venue to meet the man of one's dreams, but Cinderella still wants an invite. And this is where we see she is, honestly, hopeless. Again, hard to imagine the story of Cinderella without her wishing to go to the ball. It anchors the entire plot arc. She insists that she be able to go, too, and gets her stepmother to agree that she can join her stepsisters at the event if she finishes all her chores and has something appropriate to wear. When Lady Tremaine breaks her end of the deal, should have seen that coming to be honest, Cinderella burst into tears because she expected that things would go her way. Perrault's Cinderella thinks quite a bit less of herself. She gives her stepsisters great advice on what to wear to the ball, cleans their outfits for them, and even offers to style their hair for the event, all while asking nothing in return. Nice of her, right? But before you suggest she did all that to charm them into a pity invite, guess again. When her sisters ask her if she would like to go to the ball, Cinderella just assumes they're mocking her. It would be no place for me, she says, and not in the fake fishing for compliments sort of way. Cinderella's basic worldview is that her sisters deserve everything, and she deserves nothing, and that's just how it is. The sisters agree with her for the record. They tell her that the people would indeed laugh at the sight of her ashy butt in a ballroom. That is bleak. The godmother. Cinderella meets her fairy godmother for the first time on the night of the ball in the movie. She runs outside sobbing after her sisters tear apart her mouse-made outfit, and the enchanted woman decides to reveal herself and cheer her up. Bippity-boppity-boo and all that. It's the first sign that Cinderella's luck has changed for the better. At this point, you probably won't be surprised to hear that the original story isn't quite as inspiring. As Cinderella sees her sisters off, she finally lets the weight of her awful life get to her and snaps. She starts to cry. Okay, similar enough to the movie so far, but the issue is, while Perrault introduces the godmother, with zero introduction or context, he writes, her godmother found her in tears and asked what was troubling her, and then Cinderella tells her godmother what was troubling her. So wait, did these two already know each other? It wouldn't make much sense to write her in that way if they didn't, but they did. Why the heck didn't this woman help Cinderella at any other point in her very pathetic life? Whip up an autonomous dustbin, or I don't know, a friend. At the very least, Perrault's fairy godmother does Cinderella an added favor of outfitting her twice. In the story, the prince holds a ball 2 nights in a row, and the godmother outfits Cinderella for both. Now we're talking, godmother. A second ball? That's right. In the original story, Cinderella actually goes to the castle and meets the prince twice. On the first night, she makes it out of there before midnight, and the second is actually when she loses track of time and leaves that famous slipper behind. Surprised that she had such self-restraint the first night? Well, here's the thing. She didn't have the most engaging company. Prince Charming is no bastion of personality in Disney's film. We kind of only see him yawning over a lot of random women, then fawning over Cinderella, but at least he shows her a good time. Turns out that at Perrault's account of the party, he couldn't even muster up a polite conversation. He was so dumbstruck when he met Cinderella about how beautiful she was that when they sat down to eat dinner together, he couldn't eat or talk or do anything besides stare at her. Creepy much? But Cinderella makes the most of it. She actually goes to sit at another table at the event and befriends her own stepsisters. Yes, that is really as sad as it sounds. She gave them all of her attention and asked to share some of their lemons and oranges, as one does. The sisters all get along pretty well because they have no idea who she actually is. Family reunion. In a sense, Perrault's story is just as much about Cinderella finding love in her own family as it is about the prince. The slipper fitting is way less of a big deal in this story. The prince decrees that he wants to marry whoever fits into the lost shoe and tries it on every single woman in the kingdom before it lands at the home of Cinderella and her sisters. She jokes about trying it on. They let her, and then it fits. And she's a princess. Woohoo! Much more emphasized is the sisters' reaction, which we don't see in the film. As soon as they realize she's the friend from the ball, they keel over and beg for forgiveness for treating her so poorly all those years. And it probably wouldn't surprise you to hear that Perrault's Cinderella Cinderella is kind of boring and not at all vindictive, so she does. She actually arranges for both of them to marry men of high status and give them both homes in the castle with her. All she asks in return is that they love her forever. Aww, that's actually kind of sweet in a sad way. The Brothers Grimm. Depressed enough yet? If not, you're in luck, because there's an entire other version of this story written by the Brothers Grimm. And, well, it lives up to their name. It's basically this story, but sadder in every way. Like how? For example, instead of a fairy godmother watching over her, Cinderella gets her beautiful gown from a bird that lives in a tree over her mother's grave. A tree that Cinderella watered with her tears. Or how Cinderella's stepmother made her collect bowls of lentils in a fireplace twice to try and earn a place at the ball. Or, I don't know, how the prince ends up with the slipper because he lined the palace stairs with tar to try and catch this pretty girl that kept running away from him at the end of every night. The Brothers Grimm also didn't care much for the whole stepsisters redemption arc. In their story, the sisters each cut off a part of their own foot to try and fit the slipper, and they are rejected by the prince after he notices blood seeping out of their shoe. Ugh, gross. And the loyal birdie who gave Cinderella her dress every night? He enlists a friend, and together they peck out the stepsisters' eyes at Cinderella's wedding. For more on this story, check out Into the Woods, or maybe don't, and preserve what's left of your childhood. After hearing all this, you can probably see why Peralt's story, sad as it is, seems positively kid-friendly. And that's all she wrote. I'm Frank, and this has been Disney's Dark Secrets for Cinderella. Hope you enjoyed our look into the very stark story of a girl who just wants her sisters to love her. Thanks for watching. What was your favorite secrets? Anything we missed? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel Frederator and click on the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. Unlike an evil stepmother, Frederator loves you.